Another Sunday, another parable from Jesus, and one that should at least merit a PG-13 rating for its violent content. On top of that, this particular parable, coming as it does just after Jesus has attacked the Jerusalem temple and its leadership, and while he's arguing with them about what he's been up to, this parable is particularly ripe for an allegorical reading, in which each character or object represents something else, so that the vineyard equals the reign of God, and the landowner equals God. The tenants equal the priests and the elders of the temple. And those mistreated slaves, well, those equal the Hebrew prophets. And the Son, you guessed it, equals Jesus. Now, one of the commentaries I rely on to prepare preaching pretty much repeated this allegory as the meaning of the parable. And maybe the writer of the gospel meant it that way to make his point, that Jesus was the Son sent by God and rejected by Israel's religious leaders. But what good is that to us 2,000 years later? I'm not sure it helps us much at all, at least not in my judgment. Better to strip out that preloaded interpretation, even if it is the Gospel of Matthew's, and let's try again. This is a parable, after all, not a fable or a set of cliff notes or something. It's a story for us to enter now and ask questions about, to puzzle over, and see what wisdom it has for us now. And in this case, I think it's okay to make it all about St. Simon's right now, as long as we don't pretend that what we come up with is what the parable means for everybody else. So instead of looking for those one-to-one comparisons that one equals something else, what questions does this parable raise for you when you hear it? Mine, for example, goes something like this. Who is this absentee landlord? And why on earth would this owner leave assets in the hands of tenants the owner evidently does not know, and who obviously have no intention of doing what they've been hired to do, that is, provide the owner's share of fruit? And what possessed that landlord, after 2 rounds of messengers have been abused and killed, to send the heir to collect the produce? It doesn't seem very wise, does it? And as for those tenants, did they really think they were going to become the owners of the vineyard if they violently killed the heir and claimed the vineyard for themselves? I don't know that that makes much sense. As I think about those questions, I do get curious about us now. Even if I grant that Jesus might be suggesting that the owner is God, it seems that such a God depends a lot, and I mean a lot, on what the tenants do. And if the tenants are meant to be us, we here at St. Simon's right now, I mean, we are the ones upon whom God is depending for that share of produce. Now, perhaps we might struggle a bit to figure out what we're meant to grow, or the kind of harvest we're meant to produce. And we've had messengers over time, but maybe they've been few and far between. Or we have to rely on the record of God's messengers as we hear it in the Bible, which, as we know, is not always completely helpful. Or maybe we discover those messengers in particularly strong personalities who draw our attention, maybe clergy or other leaders that have come through St. Simon's from time to time. We may or may not listen to them, of course, but I hope we're not eager to be rid of our landlord or those messengers. But in the hyperbole of the parable, where those messengers get thrown out or killed, I do see a little bit how things might go wrong. In the absence of the owner, we might start to think that the vineyard and the fruit it produces belongs to us. We might begin to think that the purpose of the church is to nourish us, that its fruit is meant to feed us, that all of it, the buildings, the sanctuary, the ministers, the liturgy, are for the benefit of us, the members of St. Simon's. Or maybe we get distracted by the desire for fruit that's more to our liking. Maybe a great music program and a big choir, or a full assembly that everyone's present, or even that sense of community that we all value so much. While these may be very good things, they may not be the fruit the owner is asking for. In the absence of the owner, it might be easy to forget that we don't decide what fruit to produce. It's the owner who directs our work. We are tenants only. The vineyard belongs to someone else, and the fruit is for God's purposes, not ours. The chief priests and elders of the temple had forgotten their purpose, to bear fruit for God and to shepherd God's people, and not to enrich themselves. But I gotta be honest, sometimes I forget my purpose too. And while I don't think the owner is going to return violently to remind us who is boss, it does seem to me that churches that forget their purpose indeed die on the vine, their fruit withering. One of the tasks of a church in transition, a church like St. Simon's, is to rediscover and renew its own sense of purpose, to answer the basic question, why are we here? What is the purpose of this temple in Arlington Heights as you prepare yourselves for a new chapter in your shared ministry? As you call a new rector, what do you want her to help you do? Is the purpose of her ministry here to take care of St. Simon's? Or is it to help St. Simon's take care of others? Is Jenny coming here to grow St. Simon's into a bigger church? Or to help St. Simon's grow in your shared ministry from this vineyard centered on West Kirchhoff Road? As good Episcopalians, we may answer, it's a both and. We gather in this temple both to be nourished and strengthened and to be sent out to work in the vineyard, to bear the fruit God seeks. But the fact remains, none of this, neither the vineyard nor the harvest, belongs to us. As a former Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, once said, the church is the only society that exists for the benefit of those who are not its members. What fruit does the owner want St. Simon's to bear? And who will be fed by this harvest?